Well, my friends, I'm back. I am back so that we can start on the left side of our sweater. Now, let's just take a look at, of course, I'm trying to work a lot off camera so that I can have something to show you, and so that you can see, you don't have to just try to think of it in your mind, but you can see the progress you're making and that I'm making. All right, first of all, when I left, we had worked on the right side. Now, when I'm wearing the sweater, or when you're looking at it, this is the left side of the sweater, left front. All right, now look, I'm going to hold up because it's so, and see, can you see the neckline that I have worked on this left front, along with a nice button band of our little lace stitch, 7 stitches, makes up this little front edge here, so that when we're done, we don't have to pick anything up. And then, as you can see, I have the increased section that kind of rounds out the neckline, so it's just not a straight neckline like a boat neck. And then, of course, those ridges that we worked on the right side. And so your homework was, of course, to work down the front almost to the end, but stop. And then I said I'd come back and get you started, show you how to connect on the left front, the left side, which we're going to do in just a minute, and then make this nice neck front. I'm kind of holding it up so you can see it. And believe it or not, really the left side, I forgot, because I hadn't done this style in a long time. The left side is really the easy side. So you've already done the hardest side, the right side. The right front. And then, of course, that's where we bound off the nice neck. And, I'm going to give you a lot of tips at the very end. Okay. Now, I just want you to see how it looks. Let me move that little yarn thread there. Half it folds open, you can see the inside of the sweater. Alright, so I'm going to demonstrate on a lighter color yarn. I found that to be, I think, more helpful than if I tried to do it on this solid color. This was just something I picked out of my stash. So much yarn, I don't know where all this yarn is going to go. So I just started, I don't know, all of a sudden I feel this empowerment just to grab up yarn and try to use as much as I can. Alright, let me get the lighter sample in just some scrap yarn so that I can walk you through what we've already done on the right side, but now we're going to do it on the opposite left side. And this way it will always be on the video and you will be able to always find it and use it whenever you need it. Okay, back in just a moment. So I have, I just got some scrap yarn, a lighter color that I think will be a lot easier to show you exactly how to work this left side, which, like I said, I forgot is really the easier side. Now, as you can see, I have worked a few rows back and forth, and I've bound off some stitches that would represent the back of the neck right there on this little sample. Can you see that? So this is the back. We've already worked this side. Remember, this shoulder is the right shoulder. When you're looking from the back, right shoulder, neck, left shoulder. So now I am ready to attach my yarn, and I am keeping, I went ahead and put the little lace in this sample. I think will make it much easier to realize which side you're working, right or left. But there's a little lace on this side, our little 7 stitches that we have been working. So I'm ready to join my yarn right here, just right there in the back. And as you remember, the first thing we have to do is we have to do some ridges to work up the shoulder, or to go over the shoulder. And 7 ridges, just by sheer math. Everybody's body is a little different, and as you learn, you will learn to tweak these numbers. But 7 ridges for the large to 1x, 1x to 2x, my size, I'm going to do 8 ridges, and I'll go over it in a minute, and 2x to 3x, 9 ridges. Now the ridge, these little ridges, because since we are knitting every row on this sweater, which is garter stitch, it makes these little ridge rows. Can you see them? Can you see the ridges there? And of course you can see it on yours if you can't see it on mine. Alright, but do you know it takes 2 rows to make 1 ridge? So we're putting in, say for me, 8 ridges, but I'm actually knitting 16 rows. Plus 2 extra rows, because once I finish the ridge I have to knit back and come back to the front so that I can start an increase. You always, work whatever you need to work, then work back on the wrong side and back to the right side again. We try to do everything on the right side in this sweater. So that really gives me 16 rows from the top of my shoulder as I come, from the top of the back. This is the back neck. This is right at the top of the shoulder that goes across in your neck and then the other shoulder. And then going down the front, it actually gives me 16 rows. But it's easy on this to count the ridges. Later, once we go into stockinette, then we'll have to show you how to, count or come up with, figure it out. So here we go. I'm already getting off course. Let me get back on course. I said I was not going to get off course tonight. So let me see. First of all, here's my yarn that I need to attach. Because we had worked the right side, so now we have to attach the yarn to the left side. Does that make sense? I think you can see everything. So I just simply go here, take my needle. I'm using just a short circular. I'm going to put it in the first stitch right there. Nothing hard, just real simple. I always just take my yarn and just loop it over the needle. I don't have to make a stitch or anything. I can just lay it across the needle just like that and have a little tail. Make sure you leave a tail. Now I grab up the yarn and the tail and I just pull it through that first stitch on the left hand needle. Now in the second one I pull real snug, pull it through, stop, drop the tail. Now I'm just working with the working yarn, just all by itself, and I'm going to start working my 8 ridges. We'll come back on our way back on the wrong side. We'll tighten up and tie off and make sure that first stitch is snug. So nothing to do now but just knit across because we're knitting every row. So it's just that simple to connect here on the left side. Or left shoulder of this sweater. So now I'm just going to go real quick over. Oh, I feel a sneeze coming on. Oh, mercy. Okay, maybe it'll pass. Alright, I get up to my marker that represents my little lace. Just to remind you, I'm on the right side. So on this left side, or this edge, I knit 1. Remember, I have to work it in reverse. I knit 1, yarn over. Then I slip 2, knit 1, reach back and pass those 2 slip stitches over and off. Just a little reminder. Don't forget, you have to yarn over again and knit the last 3 to form the edge of our left side. There you have it. Alright, so then when I turn the work, of course I have it marked because garter stitch, it looks the same on both sides. It's a lot easier if you go ahead and mark it as soon as you have a chance. And on your long sweater, mark it in more than one place. I just did it in one place on this little sample, but on the sweater, I always do it on each end so that I don't have to look for it. Now on the wrong side, the reason we have it marked is because it reminds you this is the wrong side and all you have to do is knit every stitch. There's no work on this one. So you knit across the lace just like this. See, I'm taking those yarn overs and I'm knitting across those. I'm knitting. There's another yarn over. I just knit knit that stitch, knit up to the marker, slide the marker. Now I'm in the sweater, and I just continue to knit. Just like this, just real quick. I just want to show you when you get up to these stitches where we attach, you're going to have, alright, I'm getting up to the end where I attach, and you see I have a stitch there, and then I have those 2 strands, but they will be just 1 stitch. So I'll knit this stitch, then I see those 2 strands while I was holding the yarn together, the tail and the working yarn, just knit it as 1 stitch, and then knit the last stitch. Then you can stop and start pulling things, just to kind of pull them tight so that it looks nice and neat. Then, of course, when I turn the work, get me some yarn here, get everything straightened out. I am on the right side and ready to knit the next row and make a garter ridge. So now, not counting the row where we did the bind off, see, it just goes straight across. Okay, counting the rows what we just knit, 1, and then by the time I knit the next one, I'm going to keep knitting back and forth and doing my lace until I can count 8, for me, 8 ridges, not rows, but the ridges above where the row where I did the bind off. See, that was the bind off row right there. But I'll be able to count 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. I'll do that off camera just to save battery. And then I will be back and show you how easy it is to add our extra stitches. Whatever your size, that's the number of ridges. You know, and later on down the road, I'll tell you how I came up with the numbers, or how easy it is to kind of figure out some numbers. But right now we want to get through this to get this sweater done, because this one is our prototype, our practice, and it's very simple. You may think, oh, Jay, that one's just so simple, but the next one, I promise, I'll dazzle you. Okay, all right, let me work off camera, and I'll be right back. All right, so I have worked my 8 ridges off camera, and just to show you and count mine, and I forgot to put the marker down here, but I like to, you know, where the neck is bound off, that whole row, you don't want to count that row, so I make sure that I put a marker. I just forgot to do it on camera, but I put my marker, so I start with the row right above it, and I'm going to count my ridges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I needed 8 ridges, which equals 16 rows. Then I knit across, knit back, come back up to the right side of the fabric, right side of the sweater again, right, so that my yarn is right here on the right side, on the neck edge of where we want to start now adding our increased stitches. For me, I need to add 8. It was so funny. Somebody noticed I was going through the trying to show you, just trying to show you how we learned how to knit, and I was showing you the old school way, how we used to tally, and it's good to know that for, or just for us who, like I say, are old school knitters. But somebody laughed and said, well, Jay, I had put a marker on there for myself. I had forgot to share it with you, or you can just put a marker, so that you will know where the stitches are. But I had my marker. If you look again on the tape, you'll see my white marker. I'm telling you, we try on these tutorials. So what I want to do now, on the right side, just like some people use make one left, make one right, sometimes you have to change up what you can do on either side. So on the other side, I just simply I lifted a loop and stuck it on there, and it worked just fine. On this side, the left side, I choose to just knit the stitch on. So I stick my needle into the first stitch right here as we get ready now to add our increase stitches. I'm going to stick my needle under that first stitch. I'm going to knit that stitch, pull up a loop, and put it on the left hand needle going in from the front like that. That's the first of my increase. That's the first stitch. So now I'm just going to knit. Every time we increase, we have to knit back, knit across, knit on the wrong side to get back to the front. So now I need to knit this one stitch, stop. This is where I can pop a little marker on so that you don't have to tally if you don't want to. And then I'm going to continue to knit across all my stitches just like this. Now I will knit across this row and then knit on the wrong side, and I will see you again on the right side so that I can add. We'll just do it a couple of times just to make sure you got it. Add another stitch as I work on my 8 increase stitches. Alright, back in just a moment. So I'm back on the right side and I'm ready to add another increase stitch for me. So I put my needle in that first stitch right there on the right side and just stick my needle in and knit that stitch, pull the loop up, go in from the front and put the loop on the left hand needle. Now I've knit that stitch on, so now I can just start knitting back across just like that. Slide the marker. All these stitches are what I'm adding on this side of the marker of this. This is the left shoulder. I remind you again, we are working down the left shoulder, down the left side of our sweater. We are increasing as we go to make our neckline curve around. Just like, now you can see it start to move a little bit. Alright, now you got the idea because now you've already had practice on the opposite side. I will go ahead and make all of my increase stitches and then I will come back and show you again how we need to add our button band. So I'm adding my increase stitches and sorry, I forgot to tell you, so put you a marker. I love making tutorials. I love sharing with my friends. Alright, back in just a minute. So now I have finished all my increases for my size. 2, 4, 6, 8. I have made 8. Then I knit back across that row and knit back on, turn the work and knit back. So now I'm on the front. Now we want to stop this point and add the 4 stitches, everyone, everywhere. We're going to add 4 stitches just to give a little extra room for the border so I don't eat up all these stitches. So all we're going to do is go back on this side, go back into what we were just doing. Like I say, different sides of the sweater, whether it's right or left. Sometimes you have to work different stitches, but we're going to work the same stitch where we're going to knit into the last stitch, pull up a loop, and put it on. But this time we're going to do all 4. So that's, pull up a loop, go in through the front. That's 1. Knit again. Pull the loop up, go in through the front. That's 2. Again, that's 3. 1 last knit, pull up the loop, go in through the front. I have just added 4 so that we can start our button band. Now, before we can start that button band, of course, I've got to knit back and knit back to the front side again. So now I just stick my needle in and just knit all the way across. We can't start the button band till we're on the front side again. So I'm just going to knit just like this, all the stitches across. go. Oops. Just like that. Okay. And you can get rid of this marker. I don't think we need that, so we can just, it's all going to be in one piece now. So now I can just knit across this front, and then turn the work and knit back, and I will see you on the right side again, and we'll see if we have the room to start our button band. Back in just a moment. Alright, I have knit back. I'm on the right side, and so that means I have at least 2 rows. I think that's going to be enough. I looked at the sweater, and I believe I just did have the 2 rows. So let's go ahead now and let's work and put on our button band. Just get you started. Alright, so now you can see how the neck comes around. We've stopped the point. Now we want to just go right back into the same, you hadn't forgot your lace, have you? The same lace you've been working on the sweater. Okay, so we start out right here. And to keep the edge nice and neat, we knit 3. 1, 2, and 3. Then yarn over. Then I do a slip, slip, and then knit the next stitch, stop, reach back and pass the 2 slip stitches over and off. Then I yarn over again and knit 1. Then you will need to put a marker so that you know where the lace starts and stops. I'm going to use my yellow one just like I was using. So let's check and make sure you have 7 stitches. 2, 4, 6, and 1 makes 7. So 7 stitches going and coming to do the lace. Alright, so now we will just continue to knit across. Just like this. Now, how easy is this? I wish I could redo the right side again to make it nice and much neater and not repeating so. But, you know, like I said, I hadn't done this style in a long time because, you know, people were calling for the top down. So, but it's so good to go back and do this sweater again, because now when we finish this one, I'm just going to knit all the way to the end since I'm on a roll here. Okay, I get to my marker. Remember, on this edge, you slide the marker, you knit the first stitch because we have to work it backwards. Yarn over, slip, slip, knit. And you reach back and pass the 2 slip stitches over, just like we're doing. Then yarn over. Now the 3 stitches are on the edge to keep this edge nice and straight. So yarn over and then knit 3. 1, 2, and 3. Now we can talk. Okay. Now let me lay it out. So can I straighten it up here a little bit? So now I have started my button band. This is the front, of course. And when I turn the work, I'll be on the wrong side. The wrong side, this little mark tells me, and I can move it up or either add more as you go down the sweater. I just add more strands. Ever so many, you know, 10 or 12 or 7 or 8 inches, I'll add another one just so I can know that it's the wrong side. It tells me it's the wrong side, but it also just tells me just to knit all the stitches across. So I don't have to sit there and think, now what am I supposed to do? You just knit across. But my button band, I've started it. I have a nice, you can see here, a nice pretty curve that will be hidden once we pick up stitches for the button, for the 1 by 1 ribbon that goes around the neck. All these stitches will be hidden, and it'll be nice, neat, and clean. Can you see that? So now all you have to do is to start working back and forth, working down the front. Now I'm going to come back and we're going to talk, and then I think I can walk you through a lot. I'm going to show you how to sew, and then the last thing we will pick up your stitches for the 1x1 ribbing at the neck. So, but I would go ahead and work some down. I'll give you time to work some down, but I'm gonna, like I said, come back and show you on the real one. I can walk you through a lot. All right, we are almost, I can see the finish line in sight. And like I said, the next one, we're going to turn right around. When we do the next bottom up sweater, we will do it in stockinette, knit on the front, purl on the back, just so that you'll have a reference point of how to do that one. But then you will have two to choose from. You can do the garter stitch one or the stockinette bottom up sweater. All right, be back shortly. All right, so I finished up my sample off camera just so that I could have it and include it in this video, so whenever you come back, anytime you want. I wish I had done the first little sample a lot better, but I think you got the gist. But this one is pretty clear. This is when you're looking at the sweater. If I was looking at someone wearing it, this is the left front. Okay, you can see where this represents the back, and you can see where we bound off the neck stitches there, and then we did the ridges. We knitted our ridge number or ridge count, and then here, if you need a marker, I should put a marker there, but you'd have a marker to where you stopped your ridge count, and then we did an increase. We had an increase number, a number of stitches to increase the neck to give it this curve, and for me it was 8, so I did my 8 every, had to do it on every right side row, so I had to knit. So really, you maybe do 8 increases, but it takes 16 rows to do each, to do all the increases. And then here is the part that's exciting, because these are the stitches that we added for the button band, so that when we finish this sweater, we don't have to come back and pick up or try to match up a button band on each side. It's already included. Now what I'm going to show you next on the real sweater is how to get them even, and a few little tips and tricks how to get the two fronts, to match up, and anything else that will help. All right, take a look at that. See if you have something that looks like that as you have been working down the left front. Now, we left the right front unfinished, and you'll see why in just a minute. So we're going to continue to work down the left front, and then I'm going to show you mine, and like I said, give you all these great tips and added information that will help you every time you want to knit the sweater. All right, back in just a minute. All right, so I am back, and I want to go ahead and show you my finished, or mostly finished, left front of the sweater that we've been working all the way down to the end. So when I go to the right front, then I'm going to walk you through the different steps. But this is kind of an overall how it looks when this side is finished. As you can see, I've worked down the front of the sweater. I've done a nice bind off just to match the bind off that we started with. I have even sewn up and left the little ribbing. I'm not sewing it up. I'm going to leave it as a little split right there. But then I sew up the side seam up to the armhole, and of course you never finish it until you get the other armhole ready, so that you can kind of see if you can make them, hopefully about the same size, the opening. So always just leave a long tail. You sew up, and then you leave a long tail and stop. And then of course we will be going to the other side. But there's a nice seam, and I'm going to demonstrate that when we go to the right side. Can you see that? And this acts like a little gusset, little extra room right here on the side of the sweater. What do you think of that? So that's how it looks when you're just kind of looking at the overall. Now what I'm going to do is kind of break it down on the right side so that I can show you how to finish and what to do. And some, like I said, some great tips and things that that you'll be able to use to make your sweater turn out really pretty too. And of course, right here is the button band. Right there. Let me turn it. I don't know if you can see. Can you see the openings in the button band? So now, if I want to add buttons, I already have a button band with the button holes. So I don't have to make them. They're part of the sweater. Or I can leave them just plain. Alright, and of course this is more of a Lands' End style. Later on we will go into putting, because it's getting fall here, I'm going to take you step by step for, adding different type of sleeves. But we just want to get a basic sweater so that you can go right ahead and get started going through your stash, picking out yarn that will work if you're coming into fall like we are. Alright, let me pull the sweater over to the right side, and then we're going to actually do some work. Back in just a minute. Alright, so I am on the right side, which is where we are going to work. And I'm going to demonstrate and show you as much as I can and as easy as I can so that you can finish. Alright, the first thing we need to do is take care of, as I have shared in several videos before, this style where you come up the back and then you come down each front, and you have a front piece of fabric and a back piece where they're just flat pieces of fabric. Okay, I don't do a lot of increases and things like that, couture like knitting, where you're gonna increase and decrease. And all right, so to give a little extra room in your bust area, and for us who have more in the front and maybe just we just need a little extra help, a little extra sweater. All right, this is a little something that I do. For instance, my back was, say, 18 inches. All right. And anyone taller than me, and everybody's taller, so you may be looking at 20, 22. Just use nice even numbers. Say if your back is 20 inches. All right. Well, you want to keep on knitting your front down and go at least 1.5 inches more, and maybe even 2 if you're really large in the bust. Does that make sense? Once you start knitting each front, you just keep right on knitting, and when you get to where it should be even, you just knit on down another extra 1.5 inches or almost 2 inches. And what that does is when we line the sides up, in just a minute we'll be doing some sewing, when we line the sides up, that's going to create some extra fabric, because the front is going to be longer. In fact, let me just lift this up and show you first. Then we'll talk. So when I came down, look. That's at least 1.5 inches right there. Can you see my front? Here's the front. Here's the back piece. So it's all automatically longer. But when I sew them together, I'm going to match them up so that they're even, which is going to push some extra fabric. See this extra fabric right there? All this extra fabric will be pushed up towards the bust line and the arm space. So it's going to wind up here. Can you see how that extra fabric will be moved up? You see that? And it's going to give you some positive bust ease. And it's just something that I started doing years ago, and I thought, oh man, this works. This is great. Because I'm not that kind of knitter where I want to get into all this, decreasing and all of that. It's just plain knitting and fun for me. That's all it is. So that's one of the first things that we will be doing. We will be knitting past the back so that the two fronts are longer. Sorry, my needles keep jumping off. Now, let me just tell you, because it's so hard to measure, let me give you a good way to kind of measure a little bit, or kind of see how many stitches or how long you have it. Over here on the right side that I finished, you remember our button band? Remember the button band? Can you see it with the eyelet holes? All right, when you get, like I said, you're going to, before we do the ribbing, you're going to count each eyelet. Just sit there and go one, one, start at the bottom or the top. It doesn't matter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'd count it a couple of times to get it right. So say, for instance, you're knitting down and you said, okay, I got to go longer. Well, how much longer? So you're up to maybe 30 eyelets. 30, 31, 32. Well, I'm supposed to go longer. Okay, why don't you just go up to the next even number? Say 40. Okay, I'm going to knit my eyelet, or keep knitting the front till I have 40 eyelets. Now I have something to measure and gauge the left side by. So you have to do that before we can do the ribbing. So then I'd come over here. So now I'm going to count the eyelets on this side. And it will be, and you'll find, it's going to be shorter, so that's why you need to have something to kind of match up. So you just go 1, 2, 3 and count. So now I have 40 eyelets on this side to match that. Now I am ready to do my ribbing. Okay, in order to do the ribbing, all right, what we want to do, you need to stop on a right side row. Once you get your 40 or whatever number you're matching up for each front button band. So you'll stop, you're on the right side row. I want you to knit all the way across the bottom. That it should be, like I say, on the right side, so you should just knit across. But before you get over here to the very edge, I want you to add an extra stitch. How many of you remember, in order for us to do the 1x1 ribbing flat, I need it to be an odd number, and I need to add 1 extra stitch on each front. So while I'm knitting across, and so I can start my button band, so I can start my ribbing here at the bottom, I'm going to stop and just either knit into the front and back of a stitch or lift up a loop, whatever you want to do. I just need 1 stitch and then keep right on knitting across. Now, when you turn the work, you are on the wrong side, way down here. You're on the wrong side of the work, and we're going to do the exact, I made sure that I had the same band so that you would remember it, because we did it when we first started. Okay, so you're going to knit that first stitch, because it's my edge stitch, and then you're going to purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, all the way across. And then with that extra stitch that we just put in, you should ending with a purl stitch and then one last stitch for the edge stitch. I knit it on every row. Does that make sense? So that would be row 1. Row 2 would be the right side. Row 3, row 4, row 5, row 6 would be a right side. So that means row 7 would be a wrong side. And that's where we're going to stop and do the bind off. Now, the bind off, get myself set up here. Just our regular bind off. The only thing we're going to do, we're on the wrong side, and we're going to bind off in pattern. We're going to bind off in the knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, just like this. Let me just show you. I'm going to do some so that you can actually see it. Because we don't, most of the bind offs, just usually just knit or something, or purl, whatever. But now here we go. Here's my, hope I'm on. Oh, I suggest too, when I bind off, I try not to bind off with the same needle that I'm holding my stitches, because you have a tendency to pull and tighten up. and then you get this very tight bind off line. So I always try to grab up a separate needle. I use like a little double pointed or anything that's not the needle that has the stitches on it. So now watch. So now right in the loop, you just read the stitches and bind off just like you were working. So I see I have a purl stitch coming up, so my yarn should be in the front, just like that. Then I knit the stitch, just like I'm purling. See, I purl it. Not knit, but purl it. Now reach back and bind off by lifting that stitch in the back over the one in the front. You know how to bind off. Alright, then yarn in back. There's the knit stitch. That's the next stitch. I knit it, reach back, and loosely bind off. And you'll find that this is so much looser because it's not connected to the other. You know, it's not connected to this needle. Alright, there's a purl stitch next. So yarn in front, purl the stitch first, hold the yarn right there, and then reach back and just bind it off. Then the yarn goes in back because there's a knit stitch. Reach back and bind off. After a while, you get a little rhythm, and it's not a tedious thing, and it's not hard. You're binding off in the pattern of the ribbing. If this was 2 by 2, you'd be binding off in 2 by 2. If it was something else, you just bind off in the pattern. But we are on the wrong side, and we are on, this would be row 7. So it's the same ribbing, just like when we started, so that you will always know it won't, you know, try to keep it the same so you will know the steps. So now I'm coming up. You just keep going across. And then I'll just, since I'm this close, let me see, can I just go ahead and finish it? Finish the row out. Then we'll turn and take a look. Okay. And by using this separate needle, you're going to see it just stays a lot looser than if I was using the other part of the needle where my stitches are on. See, now I'm looks like I'm just doing ribbing, but I'm binding off as I'm ribbing. That's in pattern. Okay, so I see that I'm coming up. It's on the wrong side, so naturally I should end with a purl because I started with a purl on the other end. I purled the stitch, I reach back and bind off. Then I put the yarn in back because I knit the first and last stitch on every row. So I do the knit stitch, reach back and bind off. Then you can pull your loop. I'll cut it in a minute. I'll just go ahead and put a marker here. It's just so I can show it. Now look at what we have. Alright, this is the bind off edge on the front side, and it looks more like the cast on edge when we first started the sweater. Here's the edge when I started. Now here's the bind off edge. It looks a little more like that than this funny line on the back that you get, which is just something that happens in knitting. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't like the look of it, so I started as much as possible to bind off. See? Now it looks pretty much like the front. There. Okay. So now, alright, there's that. We know how to count the front button band on this particular sweater. Try to match it up. We know how to knit all the way across the stitches, but be sure as you get towards the sides or somewhere, just to kind of hide it. If it makes, if it makes a little funny place, that's okay. Just add one stitch so that when I'm ready to do the 1 by 1 ribbing on the wrong side, it will all work. The numbers will work out just fine because I need that one extra stitch. Okay, so next thing, let's sew real quick. Let me get you started on sewing, and then guess what? All we have to do is go back up to the neckband. Let me get some thread and some yarn and a needle, and I'll be right back. Alright, so it is time to do a little sewing So I have just cut off a nice long strand of the yarn that, that I have the sweater in. I've put it on my yarn needle. And we are going to sew up. We're going to be sewing on the right side of the fabric. Not like you would do a seam if you were sewing otherwise, where you put wrong, the two right sides together, and you sew on the wrong side. We're going to be seaming this on the right side, so each front is facing, each right side is facing me. Now you can tell right away, you see how my front is longer than my back. That's what I want, because I needed that little extra fabric to push up towards my bust line. But now to sew, we're going to move everything up so that it's even. We're going to move it up. You see already. Did you see that? As soon as I moved it up, watch. Look at that extra. Look at that. See the extra fabric? Well, it has to go somewhere, so it's going to go up. See? Now, I am not sewing the two one by one ribbing sections together. I'm going to leave that open as a natural little split or slit. Alright, what I want to start is right up here, that first row right above the ribbing, on this side and this side. So all I'm going to do is in fact, I like to turn mine, this is just me, I'm sure other people have, knitters have. So I turn so that I'm looking at it from the wrong side. Now I put my needle in that very first row. This is the wrong side, I can move that. And then I come over here to the same stitch on that side. Then I'm just going to pull it through. Stop, leaving a nice long tail. See that tail there? Then I come back and I go through it again. It's kind of like I put a stop. So now I have that on the wrong side. I lay it down so that I can see the front side. This is just a tail we'll weave in. I could have weaved that in, but trying to get this all on here. So now I know that these two edges are equal, or level. So now I just come up wherever the yarn is. I'm on one side. I come up to the front, and now I'm going to stay right on the edge. I'm going to bring this closer, and I'm going to go back and forth across the seam and pick up a couple of stitches on this side. Now, most knitters do this, and I'm telling you, they had gotten it down to a science where you go right back into the same hole and all of that, or the same stitch. But you can't see that on a lot of yarns. But you can still do this stitch. So I just stay right on the edge. I pick up a nice little stitch there. I come across the seam. See my fingers? I come across the seam. I pick up a nice stitch right on the edge on this side. I pull it. I go on. You don't have to pull super tight. You just pull it to close. See, I pull it enough to pull the two fabrics together. I come on this side, just back and forth. Just like that. If I get the yarn on that side, I'll pull it. There we go. And then I come on this side, and I'm going to work my way up. And see, you really can't see anything because we have the garter, the garter stitches just covers up everything. But I do have a nice natural slit right there on between the two ribbings, the front and the back. And I just keep going up. Take your time. You don't have to take large stitches. You can take, Let's see, can I move it on up? See, I'm just going right here on the edge. Whoops. Back it out. You don't have to pull super duper tight. Just close the fabric, then come on this edge, this side, pull it till they meet, back on this side, this edge, pull it till it meets, and so on and so forth. Now, of course, you want to go all the way up to, I would try to leave about 10 inches for an arm opening, for the armhole opening, because what we need to do is match each arm. We need to try this on, and so never close off your arm space. You want to be able to try the sweater on, see, because even even one arm can be larger than another one. One arm you might need it a little tight, a few extra stitches. The other one you might need it to take an extra stitch out. So that's why you just go all the way up and then leave a nice long tail so that you can try the sweater on and get both arm holes or arm spaces so that they're comfortable and they feel good, and that you can move your arm. You got, free reign, you got motion. You be able to move your arms. I don't want you to look like a mummy. You'll be telling everybody, oh, I made this sweater. Jay's got me looking like a mummy. I can't move my arms. Okay, so you see that? Now, it just looks like a nice little garter stitch seam. Can't even see it. But my bottom, I have the little slit there. Alright, so that's what you do. And then, like I say, leave that, and then you'll be able to try it on. Alright, so now the next thing, the next and the last thing, I'm just going to show you what we're going to do is, and I take all my baby pins out now that was holding my sweater so it wouldn't just flop around. Alright, we're going to get our knitting needles, we're going to get our yarn, and we're going to attach here, and then we're going to knit around before we do the ribbing. So let me get set up, get this all situated, and I will be back, and I'll have my number 9 circular needles ready to go. Alright, back in just a moment. So I have been working and getting things ready so that we can go ahead, and I've got a long circular number 9 because this neckline is quite long. So I've got that ready. I have my yarn, and what we're going to do, we're going to actually start picking up stitches on this edge. We're on the front side of the fabric. Here's the wrong side. I still have everything marked. I always leave it in there. I'm going to leave these little markers where I had, the increases and the ridges or whatever, and that way maybe I can kind of match up some stitches. If I'm able to get 12 stitches in here, then on the other side I could get 12. You see what I'm saying? Or here if I'm able to get, whatever it is. Maybe not 12, but whatever I can get in here. Alright, now, and the next thing is, as we knit around, we're going to try to, like I said, this neckline is pretty wide, but we're not going to just knit every stitch. We'll knit a stitch, then maybe skip a couple of stitches or skip one, and then knit a stitch. So it just depends, but we just want the stitches to lay nice and flat. We will count the stitches once we get to the other side, because we need an odd number so that we, on our way back, as we come back around, we will start working the 1 by 1 ribbing. But it's easy to just add a stitch. Alright, so now here we go. Let me just blow my fuzz off. Alright, right here with my needle, my number 9, alright. Now I'm going to find this, if you look for that first stitch up there in the corner, like that. Alright, now take your needle out and go right below it, right here on the edge. Try to get up under 2 strands. Instead of picking up that very one on the corner because it never matches up right, come down and pick up the one along the front edge like that. But of course, try to go up under 2 strands wherever you can. Doesn't have to be pretty. Nobody's going to be able to see it. You just need to Okay, now of course we're going to take our yarn, and the only way you can attach is just simply leave a tail and just lay the loop over the needle. Now if you're still new or you're having a hard time with that because it does just slip off, go ahead and just put a little loop. You know how you just make a little loop, and you could put that on the needle, and that's not going to move and slide around. And then tighten it up with the yarn like that. In other words, just tie the yarn onto the needle. Then pull it through, and that becomes one stitch. And then, we'll, like I say, go into the next one. Now we're going to start skipping some stitches. I'm going to skip the next one. Go up under, try to find 2 strands if you can. I just don't want it to be dangling on one strand. And knit that stitch. I'm going to skip a stitch, go up under 2 strands, and pull up a loop. I just open it out, spread it out so that you can see. I think I will skip that one. See, there's nothing there. So I'm going to go over here to where I can get up under 2. So they're not just dangling on the edge. And it takes a little practice, but it doesn't have to be perfect. And pull the loop up. And then move over. If you need to skip one, fine, just move over. I'm just kind of randomly just looking at what I have. If it's too close, then I move over a stitch. If that one's just stuck right up under that one, so close to it, I just move over a stitch. We're not trying to line up all the stitches with what we have in the fabric. We just want a nice neckband, but I had to leave enough room because it's better to have too much, because we can skip stitches like we're doing when we're knitting this row. We can tighten it up, but if it's too small to start with. Okay, there we go. And I'm just kind of skipping a stitch and going up under another stitch just to kind of get my needle in there. Then I move over, go up on another 2 strands, knit that stitch, pull it up, and then you can spread it out and take a look. Now look, I want you to see it. Now look, that seems like a big gap to me right there. That's a noticeable gap. So yes, I shouldn't have gone that far. I should have stopped. Just stop every few inches so that you won't go that far and you can catch it. That's just too large a gap to leave. So I'm going to come here and just find 2 strands that I can go up under and put a stitch there so that it won't look. Now, that's a much better. It's not such a large gap. Okay, so now go back and start again. Skip a little bit. Skip a stitch or so. And knit. Put it under 2 if you can. And knit. Now stop. Let's stop every few inches and see that you did not leave a huge gap. Okay, let's go on, but we're not trying to hit every stitch. Maybe every other. If you can just aim for every other, that might be a better way to. Okay, now I'm just knitting around. Okay, let me spread it out again. If you spread it out, then you can take a look at it and catch anything that you can fix right away. Alright, keep going. Alright, so I'm going to work, well, let's see if I'm close enough to the neck, because the neck is really wide and we're really going to have to skip maybe even 2 stitches. Okay, I'm going to stop and spread. That looks pretty good. So you just move them around with your finger. Looks pretty good. Let's see. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 so far. And I don't think I need another one, so I'm going to skip over the markers. That's about 13, 12 or 13. So now I'm going to go on this side. Let's see what I can do over here. This side's a little easier. Just kind of, just as long as they're not just sitting right on top of each other. Spread it out. That's looking good. There's no perfect formula. Well, you know, some people tried it, but that's just, people, this is just yarn. This is a neckline. We're just picking up stitches. Okay. We're just taking our time. Like you say, if you see a place that's too wide, you can always pull back a little bit. Nope, I think that's going to be fine. So far on this side I have 2, 4, 6, 8. Well, that's where we had those 8, where we put on the 8 increases. So that worked out just perfect. So now continue on. And I'm getting close to the neck, because I wanted to. Alright, now let me pull it over. Okay, right here. This is where the neck starts, bound off neck, and we picked up a lot of stitches. Let me check and see if I'm on. Yeah, okay. I don't want to get too close, but now you're going to have to just start skipping. Just go up under 2 strands. Skip maybe 2. Because it was so wide. If that leaves too big a gap, okay, just skip 1, then go back to just skipping 1 stitch. But you do not have to pick up every stitch in the neck, like some of our other stitches. Okay, I picked up 1 there. Now I'm going to skip the next one and go over here. Go back again. I didn't get it. There you go. Okay, now I'm going to skip 1 and then go to the next stitch that I can see and pick that up. Now I'm going to check and look for gaps. Nice and smooth. I don't see any big gaps or anything. So let's continue. Alright, I'm going to just do a few more and then I'll finish off camera and I'll come back, because we will be on all the way around to the other edge, and I'll show you to make sure. Skip 1, go to the next one. Alright, so I'll meet you on the other side of skip 1, go to the next one. Alright, just take your time on the neck. There's no rush. Just take your time. Alright, be back shortly. Okay, so I got around all the way around to my opposite edge, and don't forget, when you come around to this edge, be sure not to stop right at the top at that point, but then go down and pick up 1 stitch on this edge right there. Just pick a stitch up that way. For some reason it always evens out my stitches. Then that is the time to stop and count. And if you're lucky and you landed on an odd number, or after you counted all your stitches, kudos to you. If you land on an even number like me, I got 60 stitches. So I need to, on my way back, when I'm working, I need to pick up 1 other stitch. So before I even start on the way back, I held out my work and just kind of looked at it. As you can see, I'm not hiding anything. Everything is nice and even. I got up under 2 strands because I didn't want my ribbon to, fall off the cliff. But then when I got right here, where I had a mark, the mark kind of hit a stitch. And so I can maybe, on my way back, I left the marker there. I can take that marker out and fill in a stitch there. I can pick up a stitch somewhere between those two stitches. Don't you think that would be that's a good place? Everything else just panned out perfect. So I had 60 stitches once I counted. Like I say, if you landed on an odd one, you're good to go. If not, then you have to find an odd. You got to find an extra stitch to make it odd. So now I'm on this. Let's turn the work. I know where I have to pick up one stitch to make it come out right. Well, you might know I'm all tangled up. And so now, of course, when I turn the work, since we picked up the stitches on the right side of the work, now we're on the wrong side. Just like all the other ribbon, trying to stay and keep it so that you can memorize it, and it just comes like, oh yeah, I know exactly what to do. Row 1 is your wrong side row. So I start right here. See, I've picked it up, all the stitches, and I'm going to start with, because I knit the first and last stitch, you can slip or whatever, so I go ahead and knit that stitch. Now I simply put the yarn in front because we are already on the wrong side. You see it's still marked. Now I can purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, yarning back, knit 1, purl 1, yarning back, knit 1. Take your time and just keep your stitches nice and loose. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and go around, and when I get to that stitch, I'll pick it up. I'll come back on camera, and then we'll go from there. But just keep your stitches nice and loose. Don't try to pull them tight or anything. Knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. Alright, back in just a minute. Okay, I've made it back around to where I needed to fill in the stitch. And I left the mark there so I'd remember. Now you can see it is a pretty good gap. That marker was kind of in the way. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove the marker. I'm going to hold it close to the camera. Now I'm going to take this right hand needle, and I'm going to go in the back and pick up 2 strands. Try to get 2 strands. Okay, now I'm going to turn it and take the left hand needle and go through those 2 strands and now I have a stitch on this left hand needle that will represent it, because I had a knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. So this stitch I needed to be a knit, purl stitch, I'm sorry. Let's see, knit, purl. Now let me check again. Knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. So now I need a purl stitch right here in the stitch I just put on the needle. So I'm going to stick my needle in, the yarn is in front, I purl that stitch, and now I put the yarn in back and continue across. Knit, purl, knit, purl, and a lot of times then yarning back, a lot of times I'll go ahead and just count it off before I get there in case something else is wrong. So I know the next stitch should be knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. That is correct. I should end on a purl stitch, and the last stitch is my edge stitch, which I knit. So I can continue on and finish this row. So let's see, knit, purl, now knit, and I filled in that gap by just twisting a loop on to the needle, and this is the row you won't be able to see it or tell it, or it will just blend in, no problem. So let's go knit, knit, purl, now knit again, then yarn in front, purl, yarn in back, knit. Since this is the wrong side, I'm ending with a purl stitch, and the last stitch is simply my edge stitch, yarn back and knit. Okay, we have just completed row 1 of the ribbing. Remember, just like at the beginning, this row was row 1. Now we're going to do row 2 on the front, row 3, 4, 5, 6, and then wait for me at row 7. Row 7 will be on the wrong side, and then I'll decide if we need to go further or bind off. But there you have, and you can see it's nice and smooth. Nothing is ruffling. Like if you put your stitches too tight and you got a whole bunch of stitches, you know, then maybe you picked up too many too close if you get a ruffle, if you get a wave. Okay, but if you have big gaps, then you need to go back and fill in some of those gaps. So what you do is just hold it out and just check it. All right, I'll turn the work and I will see you in just a few. Back in just a little bit. Well, my friends, I am back. And I got a lot done while I was off camera. So, because I know a lot of you said, okay, Jay, I want to get on. So I thought I'm going to get it all on here. And I worked really hard off. So let's go through. When I left, we were working on the neck. And you were supposed to work the 1x1 ribbing for the 7 rows, and I said wait for me there in case I need to change. Well, that's good. If you work up to row 7, which would have been a wrong side row, and we'd bind off, don't bind off. Go ahead and work at least 2 more rows. Work row 8, which is the right side, and then row 9. Stop at row 9. It just needs to have a little more at the top. I started to go even longer, but that's good enough. So instead of 7 for the neck, because we want this to really kind of pop the sweater, go the 2 extra rows and then do your bind off just like we did down here on the front edge of the sweater. Everything is just the same. You're on the wrong side. You will bind off in pattern, knit 1, purl 1, just like we were doing. But instead of row 7, do it on row 9. Does that make sense? Now let's go through the rest of our checklist just to see. All right, so that's what you need to do to finish up the neckline. Then make sure that I have finished both of my seams and make sure I'm on. Can you see my seam there? I did my seam. You can't even see where I sewed it up. It's really nice. Let me pull it. Let me see if I can get my camera to kind of pick up on it. There it is, right there. In fact, I think I need to come down a little bit. So I have a nice seam right on that side. I sewed up, and of course I stopped the arm space. It was a little, mine came more, I left at least 10 inches of space to work with, and I kept trying it on. I don't like gaps or anything down here, so I just put a couple of extra stitches, and my arm space is right at 9 inches, right around 9 inches, because remember, knit stretches also. So that's one seam, and we're just doing a checklist. Then there's the second seam over here on that side of the sweater. It's all sewn up, really nice. I left a little thing here. I was tempted to put a cute little button here just to keep from having stress put on it, but I did a nice closing. I closed it up with the yarn 2 or 3 times just to make sure that it was going to stay. But there's a nice seam on that side. Oh my word. Now, and then I took it to my ironing board. I went ahead and lightly, it's so good. Yes, even though this might be, you know, the acrylic blend or type of yarn, but when you're done, you just take it and do a nice, you don't need hot heat, just warm heat. I try to do it on the inside, on the wrong side, but the only thing I saw that really needed to be kind of steamed lightly, you can do it on the wrong side, was this button band. It kind of had a little kind of ruffle to it, so I just steamed it, and then I hand pressed it. with a warm iron. It did not have to be super hot. Since this is, you know, got a acrylic in this yarn. I guess it's all acrylic, I don't know. But, you know, when you're done, you're done. No having to worry about a lot of other things. I stuck some fringe on the bottom of my sweater. I just thought it would be nice to have something. I need to steam that. But I just, since I had so much yarn. The back is just the back, so there's nothing to do there. And, like I said, it's just, that is it. So once I'm at the 9th row, I'm on the wrong side, I just need to bind off. And then that finishes the sweater. Like I said, whatever steaming you do with a warm iron, you don't need much. You don't want to make the garter stitch go flat. You want the texture. That's the whole point of this sweater. So just do it lightly on the wrong side if you need to smooth out anything, and just hand smooth it until it cools down, and then you're ready to go. And you can decorate it however you would like to decorate your sweater. Alright, I'm trying to think while I'm talking here. I'm trying to think, is there anything that I am forgetting? I'm going to take it back up. That I am forgetting to finish this sweater. I did our little checklist. Okay, so the next sweater for the bottom up people, of course, I'm going to maybe, it'll be more into fall, and we will add sleeves, or I will show you several different sleeve suggestions so that you can put the sleeve in yourself. And when we do a sleeve, we won't put all of this lace over here. It will just be plain so that you can easily pick up the sleeve. With all this lace, it would have been a little hard and maybe a little too distracting to try to add a sleeve here now. This is more of, like I said, a Lands' End style vest. It just looks real nice, little sweater. Great to put on. It worked out great, especially since we added that extra length to the front. When I put it on, I had just plenty of room for my bust line. I felt really great. Gave me good arm space and everything. So we will, that will be something that you can look forward to. Okay, and I guarantee you, even though this may be new and maybe it was a little challenging for some people, but most people I think will get it if you follow the steps. The second one, or the second time around, you won't have a problem at all. Or you will just feel like it's like oh my God, it's something I've done before. I understand. And what little parts you forget, it's on the video. I tried to take my time and show you, and to make sure I put all the important steps. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else before I close this video? Because I have got to get to the top-down sweater for my top-down friends. I'm just going to run from one to the other. I'm not taking a break. I'm working on the top-down so I can go ahead and get them started. But I hope you like this sweater. Like I said, the next one will be in stockinette. So you'll have two choices. You'll always have two choices for the bottom up. You know how to do it. It will be the same. You'll work the bottom. You'll come up. I will probably, like I said, do something so we can have sleeves. There will be something more lace, but it will be stockinette where you knit on the front and purl on the back. This is garter stitch. We just knit every row. So you have nice texture, a fun, sporty look. This is great for, just sporty-like things, enjoying. But then we can go a little dressier with the stockinette. So you can count on that, and you will be going to a little heavier yarn. By that time, that'll probably come sometime in September, because we're almost there. Now we're going to look into more Vanna yarn, a little heavier yarn, or any yarn of your choice. You can order your yarn. You can get it from any name brand. It doesn't matter, but the same weight and the same needle sizes. Now you have something to you have something to know. Okay, I already have this, but I need this. I need to pick up some extra needles or whatever, or I need to get yarn, a different yarn than my first sweater. It was more of my practice. So now I can get better yarn or whatever, because you're going to feel more secure. You're going to feel more confident on the next sweater. I promise. Okay, I can't think of anything else. All I have to do is do my neck, and then I've got to get started. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for just giving this a try. I just, all of a sudden, when the weather changed, I just all got this burst of energy. I don't know where it came from. So I got to roll with it. I got to strike while the iron is hot. Look, because when it goes cold, it goes cold. Look, I can barely even just talk myself into doing anything. So I ask you to do the same thing. If you like the sweater, and while I'm working on it with my top-down friends, go ahead. There's nothing wrong with starting another sweater. You can start it. You don't have to work on it all the time or faithfully. Just, you know how to start. Go back to the start video, the tutorial. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and start it, have it all ready, maybe work up the back a little bit. And then you can decide later. This is how I taught myself, just doing it over and over till I had the steps down. And as you see, as you have seen, I have tried to make the steps the same throughout as much as possible. All the ribbing, everything starts in the same place so that you don't have to stop and waste all your time thinking about that. All right. I better get off. This is Jay, and to all my friends everywhere, everyone, everywhere, and every size, I want to wish you happy knitting. Thank you for being a part of this, and I can't wait to bring you the next one, bottom up. But until then, I've got to work top down. Take care, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.